Great. Well, I'll get rolling. We'll start with some introductions and overview of what the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative is and what these training webinars are about. We will spend some time focusing on CPUC topics of interest and issues of interest to California tribes. And spend some time hearing from you on what is important to you. We have a presentation by the CPUC's Data Working Group and an opportunity to share for you all to voice your specific data issues, your experience with respect to distributed energy resources. The bulk of our time is going to be focused on doing a deep dive into the Tribal OIR, or Order Instituting Rulemaking, and helping us wrap our heads around not only that particular proceeding, but how to really digest any of the proceedings. And we're going to do a brief walkthrough of obtaining party status, and then we'll wrap up with next steps and closing. So I've been advised that I don't necessarily need to read this, but the program was funded by a CPUC Equity Engagement Education Grant, 3 grants received by the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, Barona Band of Mission Indians, and San Pasqual Band of Mission Indians. And we're grateful to the CPUC for funding this effort. I am Josh Simmons, co-director of Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative. Also founder and president of Prosper Sustainably. I'm an attorney, licensed California attorney as well. We have, I'm not sure if Peter is on today or not. I don't think he actually is, but part of the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative, or TECC, regulatory team includes Peter Allen, a former CPUC attorney and administrative law judge. And then we have Stephen Moss on here today with M-Cubed regulatory consultant. And then Alec is also a part of the M-Cubed team, another regulatory consultant. Samantha Smithies is from UCLA, and she is facilitating the CPUC's Data Working Group. She's going to present shortly, and she can share more on her backgrounds. And if you can introduce yourself in the chat, please share your name and also what tribe or organization you're with. That would be great. As an overview, so the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative is a program under the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association. We have 3 program areas. We have one that focuses on capacity building and technical assistance, another on economic and workforce development. And this particular webinar training series and our efforts related to this are under TECC's policy and regulatory advocacy program. Okay, so we want to just start off by hearing from all of you on key topics and issues. So I guess really what we want to do here is we want to help provide training for tribes on issues, topics of interest, how to engage in CPUC proceedings, how to understand them, how to navigate through them, and we'll continue to do that. But we ultimately want to focus our efforts on the issues and topics of interest to you. And then to a degree, we're also working on some advocacy related work. If we receive feedback here, we want to help curate that and have that be submitted to the CPUC in the appropriate places. So we're going to talk about the Tribal Order Instituting Rulemaking today, and that's focused on the Tribal Land Transfer Policy and the Tribal Consultation Policy, but it's really open to identify and address any topics and issues of interest to tribes relating to the CPUC, regulated utilities under the CPUC, and otherwise. So I welcome you all to put in the chat topics of interest, raise your hand and share. And actually, I have a working document I'm going to drop into the chat as well, so that any of you can go into. I have it on suggest mode right now. And again, we want these to be useful for you, and hopefully this is going to result in some advocacy and influencing of CPUC rules in ways that are beneficial to your tribe. And so let's get going. Anybody want to initially volunteer while I try to get this thing into the chat? There we go. I'll drop the link now into the chat. of this document. And so I have this list up here as kind of a starter list. And so this is a working list we had from before. I think it's a little bit dated. So, I even welcome you to kind of emphasize certain issues. So the tribal land transfer policy was what led to the tribal OIR itself, and then the review of the tribal consultation policy are here. So those are topics here, but what issues are you facing in working with the CPUC and that you want to see that are under the jurisdiction of the CPUC, or with investor-owned utilities, or otherwise you think that are related? So any brave souls willing to speak up after lunch?
PUC.
I'll highlight some as we go and feel free to jump in. But there's been a series of workshops on utility rights of way. Usually when tribes are seeking new service or upgrades of service, ensuring that the utilities need to obtain rights of way for their easements on tribal lands, and they require approval from federal government and BIA. Intervenor compensation was brought up. That's a great topic. We're going to touch upon that today. We're actually looking to hold a separate training or work with CPUC to offer training on accessing intervenor compensation. And then, and also if you don't see it on this list, feel free to drop it in. We've been spending a bit of time. We did a little bit of a deeper dive last time around on the TECC's involvement in the CPUC self-generation incentive program, and kind of sub-programs under that, some non-residential rebates that we're hoping to secure and maintain for the tribes. And then there's another actually new program under SCHIP that just got launched, a new residential solar plus storage program. We're actually going to be doing a tribal energy and climate collaborative exchange meeting on the 24th. So next Tuesday on the top. And even on this list, if anything jump out to you as being particularly problematic, I know as your tribe having issues accessing the microgrid incentive program. There's been some changes with respect to undergrounding that it used to be under ratepayer funding, and now it's not under ratepayer funding. Possible challenges of energizing tribal homes. I'm aware of some tribes that have homes that are not energized that have been seeking approval for that for a long time, mostly related to utility rights of way. Anybody hit hard by the PSPS outages that occurred earlier this year, late last year? Okay, well, the purpose of this is we want to make sure we're providing opportunity to to gather this information that we can be communicating it to others. So some kind of nuanced stuff too is, investor-owned utilities directly subcontracting tribes for cultural monitoring, wildfire management, and other services that tribes are actually having to serve as a subcontractor under somebody else as opposed to directly contracting. Tribal Employment Rights Office requirements and fees for utility projects is another kind of outside the box type idea. Okay, well, we will be circling back to some of this. I will, we want to have that be a working document where we're gathering that kind of feedback and that information. So I want to turn it over to Samantha right now. And Samantha, I'm not sure I did much justice to you in introducing yourself. But if you want to introduce yourself and kind of dive into your presentation, let me know when I should move forward with the slides.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Josh, and grateful to be here. Samantha Smithies, I am the project coordinator and manager at the California Center for Sustainable Communities at UCLA. We work on questions of building decarbonization and the energy transition, focusing on how to support an equitable and just energy transition. I'm here to talk on behalf of our team facilitating the CPUC Data Working Group. I'm going to provide a very high-level overview to frame our discussion to leave as much time as possible for that. And if you could go to the next slide, please, Josh. The CPUC Data Working Group is within Track 2 of Rulemaking 22-11-013, led by assigned Commissioner Darcy Hauk. This track is focused on examining the rules and requirements to improve data access to facilitate adoption, evaluation, and utilization of distributed energy resources, or DERs, and to improve DER integration with the grid. Next slide, please. The CPUC Data Working Group was convened in August 2024. We've held 9 meetings between then and May 2025. I see some familiar names on this call here. For those of you who've already engaged, thank you. This month is our last push for stakeholder engagement before we develop our draft report and recommendations. This will be ultimately finalized and docketed to the CPUC proceeding this fall or winter, depending on CPUC timelines. Next slide, please. Referencing quickly a number of other CPUC proceedings implicated, some of which I noticed that Josh had written as well on the document that we were reviewing previously. These slides are available for your future reference. The point that I'd like to make is that some data elements are covered in other proceedings rather than within the scope of the working group. And just quickly, Josh, to go to the next slide, a couple others, building decarbonization, a number of other DER programs and proceedings. It's hard to keep up. And next slide, please. And so what we're hoping to hear from you today is how CPUC can improve your data access to facilitate adoption, evaluation, and utilization of DERs and to improve DER integration with the grid. Primarily also curious about what data access barriers that you are currently facing. And next slide, Josh. Thank you. And that's all I have. I wanted to give a chance for us to talk. Our contact information is in that slide. I'll also drop it at the end. And please feel welcome after this discussion to reach out to us directly if needed.
Thank you, Samantha, for joining us. So, we kind of felt like this was a good topic to include today as we're kind of look at the macro level of issues that tribes are facing. And this is more of a subset of issues that tribes are facing. So specifically data access related to adoption, evaluation, and utilization of distributed energy resources, solar, storage, wind, a variety of other distributed energy resources. Want to solicit any kind of specific issues and challenges that you're facing. So one of my other hats is as owner's rep for a few tribes on a variety of clean energy projects. And I'm going to reiterate some of the things that I already told Samantha, and maybe Stephen, you can also talk through, raise some of the challenges we've been facing in accessing some specific data needs. But I want to open it up to others first to share any specific data access barriers or data challenges you're facing. Okay, well, I will just take
Hey, Josh.
go ahead.
Hey, Josh, this is Tomasho. It was in one of the DER presentations. I think it was around data, customer usage data and customer privacy, maybe. But I think there was processes worked out for local governments, and then even like CCAs, and other entities, but in the list there wasn't a process for tribes to get the same type of access or go through a similar process. And I did ask the question during that presentation, and there wasn't the response was, that's a good question, and we haven't addressed that one yet. So I don't know if I was all the way clear here, but I'll have to reference it, and so I'm going to go ahead and look for that. So thanks.
Thanks, Marcio. I recall this coming up a couple of times in our working group meetings. I think you might be referring to the energy data request program that the utilities have available for local governments and university as well. One of the recommendations we're considering and are discussing with CPUC is including tribes in that pathway. It's a way of receiving either aggregated or anonymized, typically, customer usage data by submitting a request to the utilities. But if there's something else also that I'm missing from that meeting, or you're referring to something else, would be great to hear.
I can mention just on this topic that we tried to get outage data in San Diego County on behalf of the tribes, and it's difficult. And you have to actually make a formal request from what's called a local government. It's not clear whether every tribe in San Diego County would have to make that request to get outage data for its service area. Since theoretically the local government is making the local government again is making a request for the outage data in its area. And I'm not, it is truthfully very frustrating that outage data is hidden at all in that fashion. So similar to what was just said, I mean, it doesn't appear that there is a expedited way for tribes to gain access to data that they should kind of own. So I wonder whether there should be kind of blanket rules around tribal access to data on their lands.
Stephen, are you suggesting that still tribes themselves just have access to the outage data? Or I think we were kind of trying to even find circuit level outage data from the last round of PSPS events to really evaluate the impact. So you can have groups that are independently evaluating, what is the economic and other impacts to these communities that may be facing an excessive number of outages for the sake of, reducing the liability of the utility from potential, damages and from its potential costs. It's basically imposing real costs on these communities that are losing power. So we were trying to even just focus on the tribes themselves and identify, again, we work with a number of tribes directly, and seen waves of PSPS events in the past that there hadn't been for kind of 2 years or so. And then I think the ones I saw, at least in Southern California, I know the Northern California ones can even be that much longer, but some pretty extensive ones in Southern California beyond what I even seen historically as well. And so being able to kind of compile, aggregate that, we can say, how do we place a value on that, and how do we have there be more of a cost benefit analysis that utilities need to weigh, and that CPUC requires utilities to weigh before they proceed with a PSPS event.
Yeah, and as long as you call me out, Josh, I'll take the floor again about this particular topic, which is we were indeed trying to do what Josh just said and more. We were trying to look at the coincidence between outages and utility investment in tribal areas to prevent outages, so that we could get a good understanding of what interventions were working in tribal areas and what interventions might not, and how we might be able to plan for those or invest for those differently. That part proved to be almost entirely impossible. That obtaining wildfire investment plans from, in this case, San Diego, though I think it's probably difficult anywhere, we hit a dead head. We hit a dead end. Alex is on the call. He was also part of this effort. It shouldn't be this hard, right? Like this is information about activities and consequences on tribal lands. It should be transparent to the tribes. There should be a way to do that.
Well, just along those lines, I have a feeling that the exact locations of wildfire mitigation projects was hidden because of utilities being concerned about proprietary information. But maybe whenever possible, it could be great to state exactly what information is not going to be put publicly available, like right at the beginning, right at the top of the data set. So that way I know what I can potentially find and what I can't potentially find.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this before to you, Samantha, too, like even just accessing interval data is challenging. So, it's, you can sign up for portals for various IOUs, and I find that some cases the data is there and sometimes it's not. So, in some cases, tribes have multiple meters on a campus and have conjunctive billing, and sometimes I can access the interval data, and sometimes I can't. And so then we're kind of dependent upon making requests to SDG&E or Edison or whoever, when it really, like, there should be no barrier between tribes having access to their usage data. It should always be there. So that I find that challenge. Another thing we were looking at too, and I don't know how relevant this is too, is just also undergrounding. What data on undergrounding costs? Where's undergrounding occurred? What have those costs been? And being able to evaluate that versus microgrids and other DER solutions for cost benefit there. That we also, the undergrounding itself will result in less outages, theoretically. In some cases, we're seeing the undergrounding and there's still being PSPS outages. But DERs that are being invested, particularly if they can be installed behind the meter, are allow tribes to benefit economically as well. It reduces their energy cost burden. So just a few more topics to add to the mix.
Josh, could I ask a follow-up on that? If in the request that you've had to make to SDG&E due to the gaps in data, have there been any understanding of what's causing the missing interval data?
It's just like they just say it's just not available through the platform. I think it's a programming thing that they just can't seem to resolve. So then we're forced to go to the account representative and then wait how many ever weeks to get that data. And then also, the data is only accessible for 13 months. I don't see why the data should be limited to 13 months of interval data. Like if you request it, you can get data going back for years. So why is it limited to just 13 months in the portal if it's even available at all? Any other challenges that others want to raise? I think one thing we're going to try to do too is just share parts of the transcript here with Samantha too, that she can have a written record of some of the issues raised. Okay, well, Samantha, thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to the outcomes of that and continuing this conversation, not just under the data working group in this proceeding, but also under the Tribal OIR, because I think that there's a significant overlap between these. So we've covered the Tribal OIR in the past and given an overview and kind of what, how it came about. We're not going to kind of go back and go into some of that. The Tribal OIR was adopted on February 10th, 2022, in accordance with Resolution E5076. That resolution was focused on the tribal land transfer policy, and actually, I think there was a requirement that this OIR be initiated within 2 years. So that did occur. The tribal OIR itself covers the tribal land transfer policy. The tribe explicitly calls out the tribal consultation policy and mechanisms and processes to build tribal capacity and increase participation in CPUC proceedings and programs. And also, really, it's got some opportunity for catch-all, covering any topics and issues of interest. So that's extremely beneficial, because otherwise you have to kind of go hunt and peck for the specific proceeding and rulemaking of interest that you then have to go join, become a part. If you really want to be able to influence, you become a party. You got to follow it. You gotta file comments, and so this is, I think, a unique opportunity to cover a wide range of issues. And so we thought it was going to be worthwhile to go through this to increase awareness of the Tribal OIR, hopefully increase participation of it. It's been a bit slow moving. It's been open since 2022. We're going to go through the history of it, but we also want to go through it today and go through the docket to kind of help you wrap your heads around what these proceedings look like. What do the filings look like? What do the documents look like? What do they contain? And so this one's somewhat midstream, and really it's more wieldy. It's been a more concise container than most. You couldn't go to most dockets that are active and run through them in 25 minutes or a half an hour. It would probably take you days. But this one is actually pretty neat and tidy to a degree, and if you follow it, it tells an interesting story. So this is the journey that we're going to take here today, and so let's go to the CPUC website. I'll pull that up in front of me right now, and I'll show you where to go to find this. And we did do this before in a prior webinar where we went through the process. So go to the CPUC website. If you want to find the Tribal OIR, you need to know what the number is. So you can go down to the bottom and go to proceedings and rulemaking, and then click on docket card. And so I regularly go back to this one. So this is the proceeding number. You enter it here, and then this proceeding pops up. So there's a number of things on here. Today we're going to focus on documents, which, Stephen, I believe this is really inclusive of everything, right? So there's rulings, decisions, public comments, but everything's under documents, right?
Yeah, anything around this proceeding, and you see now, and as we dive into this, this is a very structured dance in terms of how one goes about engaging in a CPUC proceeding, which I think is part of what Josh wants to demonstrate. But it looks intimidating, but once you start seeing the forest from the trees, it's tractable, and you can negotiate it.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So I'm going to drop down here to the really the actual, I guess, adoption of this rulemaking. And so my understanding, Stephen, is that, and hopefully this is going to work for me too. I have most of these files open on a separate browser because I find that sometimes it just stops working and I can't open up the documents. So that's a little, another kind of data access challenge, I suppose, is the website to access these proceedings and the files is not actually. Sometimes it's working well, sometimes it's not, and it seems like it should be solvable. So I believe this is also inclusive of the preliminary scoping memo. Is that, Stephen, is that accurate to say that this is also the preliminary scoping document?
Yeah, so they issue what's called an order instituting rulemaking, which you see at the top, which is the commission's envelope to be able to consider a certain set of issues in a structured way. And here they're going to talk about what they want to talk about, essentially. And the initial OIR, you say it's about, as I think Josh indicated, it was about the tribal land transfer. But the commission has kind of a lot of running room to decide what they're going to talk about, as long as they sort of set it up correctly. And normally what happens after an OIR is then there will be what's called a pre-hearing conference at which parties, well, even here now, they'll probably say someplace in the lower part of the document, please send us comments about this if you think this is an appropriate.
Yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to walk through all these things. So usually, this particular, and I'm assuming all of them are like this. It gives some background on this particular OIR and how it came about, going back to the governor's executive orders on generally on what tribes it faced, and so this flowed down then talking about how there's the state policy that resulted in the CPUC's policy. So it gives you kind of the background. It's nice to go back and see all this and understand where this all came about, what its overall purpose is. And you keep making your way down, and then you really get to this section right here, the preliminary scoping memo. And this talks about what this particular rulemaking is intended to be about. This is the bounds of it, or the opportunity to shape the bounds of what the rulemaking is on. So I had already kind of summarized what was identified as the preliminary issues for the scope of the document. So there's the TLTP, Tribal Land Transfer Policy, is a large part of it. the Tribal Consultation Policy, capacity building for participating in CPUC proceedings and programs, and then really here, this other relevant issues as may be developed. So this isn't usually an opportunity, at least from my understanding, my limited experience with CPUC proceedings, you don't really have a catch-all type opportunity like this to really talk about any topic of interest. And obviously this is now within the bounds of tribal matters, but those matters are cover the entire breadth of what CPUC has interest in. So this issuing of the preliminary scoping document and the initial filing of this rulemaking and adoption of it then includes a request for comments. So this included a series of questions for which the CPUC was seeking comments within 90 days. So there was kind of 3 initial questions. Some of them are they're somewhat largely focused on the tribal land transfer policy, but questions on trainings and resources tribes need to participate and engage with CPUC, and then some that are more so in the weeds. So this kind of set the stage for the conversation and what we're hoping ultimately results in some changes at the CPUC. It also includes a preliminary schedule for various events. So a pre-hearing conference, the adoption of a scoping memo, various workshops and consultations. So some of these were, more like timeframes of this date from issuance, and then some are TBD. So we'll see how this all plays out as we continue to proceed. And I don't know that we need to cover any of this, rest of this right now. I guess another thing to point out is to address intervener compensation here as well. That the filing for a request for intervener compensation need to be filed. The notice of intent needs to be served within 30 days of the pre-hearing conference, so 30 days after the pre-hearing conference. And there's kind of some nuance there. You talk about who reach out to the public advisor and some outreach activities. So then on these, and I assume this is all for all of the proceedings, but there's this list of the different utilities, the regulated utilities. And so, Stephen, is this essentially the service list for the utilities is embedded in all of these off the bat? Is that kind of what this functions as right here?
We call that a service list so much it's the applicants list, or the list of people that have to answer to the commission. These are not parties per se, they're actually more like stakeholders, though you will have to serve these folks.
Yeah, so the electric and gas companies that the IOUs were mostly focused on, but then there's water, and then I guess there's kind of telecom too. So you kind of keep going down, you can see all the different.
Now that's the service list.
Oh, this is the service list. Okay. Yeah, so the service list starts off and it basically includes all the regulated entities, right? So it's like they're already receiving notifications really of all proceedings off the bat. So then it's up to other interested parties to sign on to participate or sign up to receive notification.
Which you would hope, another thing to bring up in this OIR perhaps, that all tribes would be on this list, right? Like all California tribes should be on a service list for a rulemaking like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, the notice to assign this to the initial ALJ, administrative law judge, CPC administrative law judge. So basically, this was in February 10th. It said there were 90 days to make comments on that initial preliminary scoping document, including the questions. So then we had a series of comments that were made and filed. If you look at this, you see that there's Yurok and Northern Chumash, and that's the only really tribal representation here. It's largely the utilities. So they're kind of to a degree responding, and most of these are focused on tribal land transfer policy. I let me open up Yurok's in particular. Which I have some of these already over here. Let me consolidate this real fast. Nope. All right, so in case I wasn't able to get this. So this was that initial resolution that led to the adoption of the Tribal OIR. Here's that filing I already shared. the assignment to the initial administrative law judge. And then, so I'm just kind of providing these just as examples, and these are available to anybody to view online. So UROCs in particular, they have listed all the questions. They had pretty extensive, they had the preamble intro, and they essentially responded to all of the questions. So now these are all part of the record, should be considered for the scoping of the document and, the further rulings and rulemakings that occur. Again, I'm not going to get so much into the weeds here. We had Northern Chumash also filed. They had some briefer responses, but they also addressed all the questions. And then you had the different utilities that expressed some kind of interest in some topics, particularly the tribal land transfer policy, and and talked about responded to the question on trainings and resources that be provided to IOUs with respect to tribal consultation. I found this one in particular interesting when I popped open. So City of Carlsbad, I wasn't expecting that. So City of Carlsbad made a comment with respect to the San Onofre nuclear power plants and some I guess some rights they believe that they may have to some land there. So it's interesting to see who shows up and what comments they make, and you have to pay attention to this. If tribes aren't participating, then really the conversation is being dominated by the utilities and other interested parties. Okay, so yeah, those dozen or so comments that were filed, and then on June 3rd, the assigned administrative law judge extended. So basically, when comments are filed, there then is an opportunity to respond to those comments, and it's typically like a week. Is there a standard, Stephen, for how long after? And it probably was in that initial filing.
It would be in the filing, and a week or 10 days would be typical, though sometimes it's longer.
Yeah, so the week or 10 days, whatever it was, they didn't get any, either they didn't receive any comments and responses, and they want to provide an opportunity for more. So they issued that opportunity, extending the reply comments to these comments to June 24th. In the meantime, they sent out an email scheduling the pre-hearing conference. So sometimes you'll see, interestingly, there'll be so this was the notice extending that comment period, and then email. So an email was then actually sent, and then that email was filed from the ALJ, providing the details on the pre-hearing conference. So then there was the opportunity to file comments to the 24th, and we had UROC who did file a comment, and then a series of other utilities. So then you have to understand, like, now they're addressing the earlier comments that were issued. So this is the one for the UROC tribe, and their comments focused on the recommendation for tribes creating ancestral territory maps, the recommendation for kind of sharing data. So they were kind of disputing that, and disagreeing with some comments from Edison, or from SDG&E and Southern California Gas Company. And then we had Pacific Bell. I think kind of this popped out, and they made some comments regarding that there were some exemptions for that there are certain exemptions for land transfers that were already in the Public Utilities Code Section 851, and kind of maintaining those specific exemptions. So anyways, you go through these, you can get in the weeds and kind of see what different positions groups are taking. So follow this along a little bit further. We get past the comments that were filed on the June 24th, 2022. On June 28th, there was a postponement of the pre-hearing conference that was supposed to occur on the 30th. And so that conference did not occur on the 30th. And it wasn't until September that a new notice of the pre-hearing conference was filed. So September 9th, it was then the pre-hearing conference was rescheduled for October 11th, 2022. Then we had a reassignment of the administrative law judge. So it just basically kind of changed hands from who was presiding over this rulemaking. And then, so you don't see it here, like that pre-hearing conference on the 11th did occur. And so the documentation is that this filing of the transcript from that pre-hearing conference on the 18th. So this is the transcript from that. So here's the transcript itself. So that they had court recorders there transcribing the entire conversation, and it's kind of the initial preamble of it, and it essentially there was an opportunity to verbally join as a party. So we're going to go through the process of joining, filing to become a party. From the record, the SCTCA's filing to become a party is the only instance I actually can see in the record. So some tribes could have become a party through here. It appears that the Northern Chumash and Yurok tribes were already parties. I don't exactly understand where and how that occurred, but it can take different shapes. So basically, there was nobody that requested to be a party. The only tribe that I could see that was actually at the pre-hearing conference or participated, and it was virtual, I believe, was Northern Chumash. And then they kind of basically opened it up to everybody who's there to be able to kind of just weigh in on the preliminary scoping and make comments. Is that, I guess, Stephen, is that a good characterization of kind of the pre-hearing conference and what it's intending to do?
Yeah, so the pre-hearing conference is kind of the formal kickoff. And if you appear at a pre-hearing conference and want to become a party, just by appearing, you're a party, or you request to become a party, the judge almost always rules it.
Yeah.
And the judge will say, like, hey, what do people think about the scope, the calendar, the issues that we are going to address? They sometimes talk about whether or not this should be a rate making, categorized as a rate making, which means there's money at stake, and then that triggers some other issues. But so sort of an opportunity, a formalized opportunity to weigh in on, sort of throw out your thoughts about things.
Yeah, so here's the part of the transcript where they're asking if anybody was interested in verbally making an oral motion for party status, and there wasn't. And then I kind of scrolled through for even the Northern Chumash's comments, and they basically indicated that they didn't have anything to add beyond what they had already the written comments they had already submitted. So you had a number of other comments made by other entities with interest in this. Okay, so then we're moving on from so that transcript was October 18th when that was issued. So then remember, it said that any interested parties must make a claim for intervenor compensation within 30 days. So this was October 11th. So November 10th, we had Yurok and Northern Chumash both file. This is a copy of Yurok's filing, and so again, we're going to get, I think, more into the weeds, but there's a form that needs to be completed and a variety of justification that needs to be provided to make a claim for intervenor compensation. And so Yurok and Northern Chumash had filed that notice. Okay, so then things kind of continue moving along. I guess really nothing in particular happened until January 25th, 2023. There was the let's see, so basically there was a notice, and so there was some proposed modifications to the tribal land transfer policy that were here. There was notice of opportunities regarding tribal consultations, and then a planning of a tribal en banc meeting that occurred up at Blue Lake Rancheria. So there were some specific questions, particularly related to the tribal land transfer policy, that were posed here, for which they were seeking comments that were related to the proposed modifications to those rules. And then there was an attachment that summarized notes from various tribal consultations that had occurred on this rulemaking. So From, I guess, May 24th on, I think there were over a dozen tribes that did meet with the CPUC to discuss that. So CPUC met with them at different venues and documented those meetings. I was actually on behalf of Paula. I was participated in one of these meetings as well. So basically that gets filed with an opportunity for comments. So then those comments were due, I think, by February 16th. Sorry, so joint opening comments. So basically, SDG&E and Southern California Gas Company filed their comments on the 2nd, and then most other parties filed their comments on the 16th. Won't get into the weeds there. You can review those, but they kind of address those questions. Really, all the comments seem to be limited to the questions that were posed. You could have interpreted it to probably cover anything, including any of those consultations that were summarized. So moving on past that, and there weren't, so again, there weren't. In this case, we saw Northern Chumash, and we saw no other tribe filing comments. And then, then you see some procedural things pop up. So CTIA, which is, I think, a utility for communications, they had a substitution of a representative. So when you have a different representative, you need to file to have them replaced in the proceeding. And if you're participating in multiple proceedings, you have to do that for all the proceedings. March 8th was the so Great Rancheria. So there's a ruling basically that provided notice of a comment that was accepted and an opportunity to respond to those comments. So these comments were made on the 16th. There was then an opportunity to respond or to reply to these comments. Nobody filed any replies to those comments. Great Rancheria submitted comments. Likely, they didn't have party status. They submitted it in a different format. There was a ruling made to accept those, and then another opportunity to respond to the comments that were made by Great Rancheria. Nobody did respond to that. So that effectively is kind of part of these other comments. And Great Rancheria's ones were, I think, basically addressing those same questions from the prior requests for comments. Okay, so moving on, then there's the scoping ruling. So this is a kind of a key point in time where all this information has been gathered from the pre-hearing conference and from all those comments, and it resulted in more questions to be answered. But those questions were kind of seeking to refine the scope, and then setting the stage for how the rulemaking will play out. So there was a schedule set for a variety of tribal consultations on different topics and workshops. So some of them with firm dates, some with kind of TBD dates. And again, some of the other same stuff as before, but that was kind of the key takeaway from that. So then following that ruling, the UROC had a notice to substitute their counsel, so they had attorney representation. They needed to make a filing to ensure that they had the appropriate counsel on there. There's a ruling providing notice of workshops on the tribal land transfer policy and tribal consultation policy. So basically that's just a notice that these workshops occur on these dates. And then there was a notice of a workshop to occur, the location of a workshop to occur in Northern California. There had been, I guess, tribal consultation workshops, tribal workshops and consultations scheduled for the 30th and 31st. Those got canceled for rescheduling. And then it was sent by email initially, and then a formal filing of it. And then we had then kind of same thing for 2 workshops and consultations supposed to occur on December 7th and 8th. And also to be rescheduled for a different time. on December 27th, we saw that Northern Chumash withdrew their notice of intent to claim intervenor compensation. There's no, it basically it's just a notice. There's no reasoning why that occurred, but they obviously had the reasons. So then on January 9th, we had the rescheduling of some of the workshops that weren't held. So a series of workshops did occur. You don't really see them until this ruling right here on March 5th. So this ruling on March 5th includes the documentation of all of the, let's see, this is the notice of the workshop. This is the withdrawal of the intervenor compensation. This is, so basically all these workshops occurred. All this information was gathered from these workshops. And then, so this ruling was basically an request for comments on what was the feedback gathered from those workshops, and also notification of some further events. So this attachment has a series of workshops. This is the November 7th one at Blue Lake. You know, not a huge crowd here, but if you go through here, you can see who participated in all these and the purpose and all the outcomes of the different ones. So another one at this is still Blue Lake. Here's the comments that were received. This is the one that happened at Hamul and who participated there, and some of the feedback and comments that were received there. So they're gathering information from these workshops and adding into the record in this manner. Okay, so we're getting close to the end, even though we're still in 2024. It picks up kind of rapidly from here. So they requested comments. Let's see, on the 12th, there was then a correction to that ruling and that request for comments on a date. There were comments. There really weren't many comments. Then we had, I guess we had something filed by Mono Lake. That one was not submitted in the normal means, so I think it was they accepted it, and then they provided an opportunity to reply to those comments, and there was a reply from Edison to Mono Lake's comments. And then really a long time went by until there was a series of motions granting party status to Middletown, Upper Lake, and Hopland tribes. And then the next is a notice of a workshop, but the joint rights of way workshop that was actually occurred at Rincon on November 14th. And then a ruling seeking, another ruling granting party status to Rincon after that in December. And then a ruling seeking comments, inviting comments on the outcomes of the workshop, the presentations and discussion, and there were no comments submitted in response to that. So since then, we got a no substitution for counsel, and most recently our activity of actually filing a motion for Southern California Tribal Chairman Association to become a party, and that was accepted. So that is really what's happened to date. It's kind of been somewhat slow going. There's supposed to be a rescoping document that's going to be issued any time now. That will provide another opportunity for questions and comments and to revise the scope. So our intention is to be more actively involved and also help other tribes be more actively involved in this, so we actually can make this into an active proceeding that's very useful and that does kind of move the needle on topics of interest to tribes. So before we go through a rapid party, how to become a party, any questions on that?
I have a question.
Yep.
Hi, it's Selena. I'm at Trinidad Rancheria. You said just now that there'd be a new scoping document that will be released soon. Could you just repeat what that will include?
So I don't know if I should, so obviously I'm not representing CPUC. We've had some conversations with Commissioner Houck. So I guess, Stephen, the intention was that there's going to be really a rescoping document issued that's going to kind of provide an update on like where the scope kind of stands, but also my understanding is it's also going to provide another opportunity for that kind of catch-all for the scope to be broadened as well. So I don't know, Stephen, is that your kind of recollection? And Bree, I don't know if you have anything to share on that. And so Bree's with us. I believe, are you with us, Bree? The new tribal liaison for the CPUC, the CPC tribal advisor. So we're happy she's here, and we're starting to have conversations with her. And but yeah, Bree or Stephen, want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be a bit of a reset. The last scope was fairly narrow, and there's indications from the commissioner's office that this will be a bit broader. And I also think because of our engagement and possibly others on the call, other tribes, we're going to ask for it to be broader. And I think that it sort of dovetails back to what Josh said about the lengthy issues that he presented early in this meeting. We can ask that they consider any of those things, right? And I think the commissioner will be sympathetic.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself real quick. Delahan Shahushi Bree Fraley. My name is Bree Fraley, and I'm an enrolled citizen of the Tolowadeni Nation, and I'm the newly governor-appointed tribal advisor to the California Public Utilities Commission. And so my main priority in this role is to help shepherd this process along and take on this portfolio for this OIR. And so the document that I'm working on with Commissioner Houck is an updated tribal consultation policy. And so I believe, Josh, that's probably what you're referring to in regards to what's going to be shared out. And so we have a timeline of sharing out a revised draft tribal consultation policy, hopefully mid-July. And at that time, the announcement of me being the new tribal advisor will go along with that opportunity for participation and consultation around the draft consultation policy will be announced statewide to tribes on our list. And we plan on doing a series of tribal consultations, north, central, and south over the summer and into the fall, with one of those being coupled with a virtual option. And so things that we're wanting and encouraging are tribes to become parties to this proceeding. So I know that Commissioner Houck was extremely excited when she saw that the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association recently submitted to be a party. And we're working with Judge Gao on making it an easier process than what has been in the past. And so looking at a form document that would be filled out, and it would they would automatically add tribes to become parties to this proceeding. And so, yeah, I'm really interested to hear tribal issues and concerns. Let's hear all the things that are problematic, that cause issues for sovereign nations trying to work through energy sovereignty and working with the CPUC. So I'm here to be a connector and hopefully bridge builder to help support tribes in their sovereign efforts of prosperity. So I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're very excited to have you, Bree. I mean, the office has been vacant for a little while, and so really excited to begin working with you. And I think you're coming at the perfect time too. I think we're going to be picking up momentum here. So we are at time. We're actually going to spend a little more time just walking through the formal process of becoming a party. Well, it's going to be recorded, so you have to go. You'll get a copy of the recording. But we'll stay on. If there's in the meantime, are there any other questions on the tribal OIR and what we just went through? Okay, all right. So here are the tribes. I think Amy went in mind the list of Amy's the tech coordinator or tech project manager. Mind the list of which tribes appear to be parties to this right now. So if you looking forward to an easy form. We did it the hard way, where you have to file it in a certain form and send it to the service list. So Alec's going to go through that process for you right now. So Alec.
Yes, hi, I'm Alec. I'm with MQ Consulting. So we're working with the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative on this. And I'm just going to talk about how to officially become a party at CPUC proceedings. Next slide, please. So just first off, why would you want to be a party? I think it helps you have your voice heard, your proposals considered, and you have full rights to all related proceedings. So when you're a party, you get on the service list, which means that you'll get emailed and notified when anything on that docket log comes up that we just went through. You'll be able to submit testimony. If you don't like how it's going in the proceedings, you have reprisal through the court system if you really wanted to get involved. But just becoming a party is your chance to engage as much as possible. So, for example, let's say your tribe has issues associated with utility rights-of-way and wants to engage in the Tribal OIR, what we were just talking about, proceeding. If you really want to dig into that and recommend changes on the state level to this policy, maybe give examples of how utility rights-of-way have impacted your tribe, that would be a great thing to become a party for. But also, it being a party is hard and complex and potentially is more than your tribe is willing to deal with at the moment. So you could also become a subscriber, which is information only. You could sign up in a minute. You mostly just will get updates of what's going on in the proceedings. And I think being a subscriber is a great step because you could get updates of what's going on. You can follow that without too much commitment. And then if you decide that you want to dive in, you could become a party and get more involved. Next slide, please. Okay, so how to become a party. There's easy ways and there's hard ways. So the first one is filing an application, petition, or complaint, which is really opening a case. If you open the case, you're going to become a party. You don't need to do more work. You could also offer comments in response to a rulemaking or in response to a scoping memo. So there'll be specific comment windows in any CPUC proceedings. And if you offer comments within those time windows and ask to become a party, you can become a party. And then the third way of, just not any additional work to become a party is to participate in that pre-hearing conference. And you just need to orally ask for party status. But there's one step which has additional work, which is what we did in this case, which is a motion for party status. It's not the most complex document. It's probably a page or two, but it does require work. But the benefit of that is that you don't necessarily need to be within this specific comment window. You can make a motion for party status at most times during the proceedings. Yeah, so we were the last people to make a motion for party status on the Tribal OIR proceedings, and the reason we had to do that was because it wasn't a specific window for comments. Can we do the next slide, please? So now let's say you want to become a party, you want to submit comments or a motion for party status. It's not that easy. It's very legal. So first off, I would just write my comments or motion for party status in plain English on a normal document on your computer. But then I would go to the CPUC website, and they have templates for comments or motion for party status or all the different types of documents you could submit. And I would verbatim follow as closely as possible the formatting and wording of those templates. And on the templates, they'll also right underneath it have examples. So lots of examples, lots of templates. It's a little annoying, but you really need to get that formatting right. And then the other thing you're always going to need to do, no matter what type of document you're submitting, is a certificate of service. So a certificate of service has the entire service list, which you get off the docket log, and you will need to email everyone on that list to serve them officially. It's again, not that complicated, but it takes time, especially when you're beginning. Next page, please. So how to serve and tender documents. So first, you're going to need to create your comments or motion for party status and your certificate of service. and turn it into an archival PDF. They call it a PDFA as well. So then you're going to email everyone on that service list. And sometimes I've found that the service lists are too large depending on your email provider, and you'll need to email it in batches. And this is all within a day. You need to electronically file the PDFAs. The website's right there. And I also like to print and mail a copy to the 1 or 2 administrative law judges in the proceeding. I think it just gets rid of any sort of ambiguity, and they really can't claim that they haven't been served after you mail the ALJs. And this is really important. You need to monitor your email for submission, approval, or rejection, because CPUC has a pretty lenient and nice policy with rejection. So if your document doesn't meet a formatting standard or some sort of standard, they'll reject it. And I think you have 7 days to fix it and resubmit it, reserve it, refile it. But if you do that within 7 days and it is then accepted, you can have the official filing date be when you first submitted the document. So for example, if you submit comments on the last day of open comments, and then 4 days later it's rejected on some technical grounds, you can go back, fix that, and still have your comments submitted with officially submitted before the deadline. So just monitor your email and make corrections as necessary. Next
I want to
slide,
point out
please.
the service
yeah.
list. So you actually go to the proceeding, and so you click here on this one to see the service list, and can download a comment delimited file that you'd want to use. But it's lengthy. Are there any specific requirements for how many, like doing it in batches?
No requirements, just some emails won't let you send to 500 people at once. And yeah, within that, if you could actually go back to the service list, Josh. So for the certificate of service, I directly copy and paste all the parties and just go down, put that copy, paste, put it in the service list. But then to actually email everyone, I download the CSV file, which is kind of like an Excel file. And you're going to see there's a column for everyone's emails. And I take that, and if it's super large, I usually cut it off around 200. I'll send the email in batches. But if it's less than 200, I could just send, see in column D, you could copy every email right there. So if it's, yeah, if it's super long, multiple batches, if it's a smaller one batch. And yeah, you'll get a lot of emails back saying, you know, whoever's out of the office, or maybe this person doesn't work here anymore, just automatic replies, but I ignore those, and the process does work. And if we could go to the next slide. And
something too is like there's this labeling of P and I that they don't have any headers for, which do you think they should? P means party, I means informational only, so you only need to send it to the parties. Is that right?
Yes, you only officially need to send it to the parties, but they suggest you send it to the parties in the information only. And, you know, it's an email. It doesn't really take much more work to send it to everyone. So that's what I do. And I just want to say this process is very legal and technical. And the first time it took me 3 or 4 times longer than it takes me today. Now I know the templates, now I know the rules. I've been rejected many times, and I see how the types of mistakes that I make a lot. So if you get rejected, it's okay, it gets easier. And yes, in the last slide, I have what I think are some helpful resources. Like this one is the template. There's another CPUC document on creating these documents and just what they recommend. I even put the PDFA converter because that's a mistake. Don't just think you can upload a PDF. It won't work. You need an archival PDF, which means that it can't be changed. And then, yeah, you could see we even linked to a recent motion for party status and certificate of service for the Tribal OIR.
Okay, well, thank you, Alec. Apologize for keeping you all longer. That won't necessarily, as I mentioned, we're going to provide a training on intervener comp in the future. We're still working on a petition for modification, extending some deadlines. I talked about the S-chip residential solar plus storage equity program presentation next week through TECC. And we're still seeking some presentations for solar for all opportunities on tribes. That's it for us today. We really appreciate you all staying extra, and we'll make this recording available. So unless there's any final questions, Selena, hi.
Thanks. Can you just go back a slide?
Sure.
I just missed that. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I can drop the link in the chat for the. I think I can. Amy, do you have it handy by chance? Let me get a.
Yeah, it'll take me a minute.
There, if you go to we're trying to keep our things posted. We're working on a full website, but in the meantime, we have a web page on SCTCA.net. So if you go to here, you'll see the TECC training has the link to register. So I'll copy that. Okay, any final questions? Again, thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.